One day, two non-athletes woke up and said, "Hey, let's do a sports podcast." These courageous warriors faced great obstacles such as mediocre microphones, Skip Bayless, and Matt Hendrickson. This is The Unathletic. Welcome back, everyone. Welcome to this edition of the, not the Comeback Kid. I almost said it. This is the first ever edition of the Unathletic, right, Nate? Oh my goodness, we're back. How does it feel, Nate? How does it feel to be back?
Oh, it feels great. I'm so happy to be back.
Yeah, we're unchained by the forces which withheld us in over the previous months, and we have gone through a very arduous journey over the past, in the words of our prior intro, arduous journey to get this podcast back up and running for you loyal listeners at home. And yeah, I'm really excited to be back, and it's the start of a new era here for the Comeback Kid, or what was formerly the Comeback Kid. So I'm gonna try to keep up with me here as I try to explain the changes that are going to be made about the show. Essentially, the Comeback Kid still exists. However, this is going to be an umbrella term that is going to be used sort of to associate both shows that we're going to be having. So yes, we are going to have two shows every single week. The first show is the one you're listening to right now. This is The Unathletic with myself, Ben Friedel, along with Nate Wiggins. And on Fridays, it'll be Rev Up Those Friars with proud Servite High School alumni Matt Hendrickson, along with fellow Servite alum Nigel Ward, who's on the baseball team. And so they'll be handling things on Fridays. We'll be handling things on Mondays. It's a great time to be, doing podcasts, and we're growing, and we're excited about it, Nate.
Yeah, and we're committed to bringing you the best content, and so now you don't get the best content just once a week. You get the best content twice a week. And last time I checked, 2 is better than 1.
Yes,
right,
two is better than 1, and we're excited. We don't have as many restraints as we had before, so you may hear us slip some sort of explicit word here and there, but you know what? Just don't be afraid for us to get pulled off the air, because we are in charge of all the content that we are producing, and we have as much intellectual freedom as we've ever had.
I just want to apologize to my parents in advance if I do accidentally swear on this show.
Yes, Nate's parents are very loyal listeners to what is now the Unathletic, episode 1, and we're excited about it. So I would say that this show's mission is essentially very similar to what the Comeback Kid was. We want to bring you sports and stories that we truly care about here on the show, and that usually diverts away from traditional stories that ESPN, Fox Sports may cover, the vicious cycle of the NFL draft combine 24/7, or just talking about, LeVar. You love LeVar, but
I love LeVar, yeah.
And you can't get enough of him. But for me personally, I can get too much of LeVar Ball. So having a break from the LeVar Ball Center is good here and there. So, yeah. Anything else, Nate? You wanna point out, or should we just jump right into it?
I am just really excited to be able to talk about Arsenal with you
God.
without the restrictions of family-friendly language, so that you, Ben Friedel, can say how you truly feel
can go
about Arsenal Football
fan
Club.
TV on him. Oh my gosh, yeah, that totally transitions us into our first segment, Nate. And it's been a while since we've done a show, and I would say the last time we did a show was mid-January, and this was before the vicious cycle repeated itself of Arsenal. And we were discussing this when we were prepping. Like, I don't think I can even introduce this segment without getting just so angry. So Nate, can you let our listeners know what's been going on with Arsenal Football Club?
Yes, well, Arsenal, they're in free fall right now. They have lost 4 in a row, including back-to-back 3-0 defeats to Manchester City, one of which was in the Carabao.
No, we're not talking about reindeer. It's
Carabao.
It's a Chinese energy drink.
Carabao Cup final, and one was in the Premier League.
Mm-hmm.
Yesterday, they lost to Brighton and Hove Albion, and just for a little context, this is Brighton's first time in the Premier League ever, and their first time in top-flight English football since the 80s. So now Arsenal finds themselves 10 points behind 10 points behind Tottenham. Tottenham's in 4th place.
Yeah.
Arsenal's in 6th place, and now they are 33 points behind future title winners Manchester City. They have lost more than any other Premier League team in 2018. So now, I ask you, Ben Friedel, should Arsene Wenger go right now?
Okay, so before I even get into this, let's preface. I am an Arsenal fan. I've been an Arsenal fan for a number of years now, and so this is a calamity that I feel very personally attached to. To answer your question, Nate, should Arsene Wenger go now? Yes, he should go. He should have, but he should go now. He should have gone yesterday. He should have gone a week ago. He should have been gone 5 years ago. He is. I tell Matt this all the time. He's like the Mike Scioscia of the Premier League. No one, he had a lot of success 10 to 15 years ago, but no one really knows why he's still around, and it's kind of just this unbreakable bond, seemingly, right? And so I really think that he needs to go now. And this happens every year. And we didn't have a podcast last year, but I was in the same place emotionally with Arsenal last year, following their back-to-back defeats from West Brom and Crystal Palace. I think both losses were 3-1 defeats. And that caused Arsenal to pretty much fall out of contention last year for the title. And it's not like this is anything new with Arsenal. And amazingly enough, Arsene Wenger willed the team to win the FA Cup last year, earning him a 2-year extension. And it's as if he manages only when his job is on the line. And we saw that last year, and it earned him even more security. And it's just, I think it comes down to the spineless board of directors at Arsenal Football Club. We have Stan Kroenke, American guy, Stan Kroenke. He's the owner of the now Los Angeles Rams. He moved the St. Louis Rams to LA somewhat heartlessly. He owns the Colorado Avalanche, one of the NHL's worst performing franchises in history. I don't think even arguably, he is the worst owner in sports across the board. And
I don't know, man. As a former Charger fan, Dean Spanos is pretty bad.
Him and Dean Spanos are, I think, the power couple for just terrible sports owners. And it's just over and over again. This guy will not give the team the resources that Arsenal needs in order to succeed. With that being said, again, 10 years ago, I think, is when Arsene Wenger should have gone. That's when their real trophy drought started. There was a time between, I believe it was 2008 and 2012 or 13, where Arsenal was a trophyless club. They didn't win a single domestic league. They were qualifying for Champions League every year, but they obviously didn't have good enough sides to win that. And so I think that would have been the time to get rid of him. But now it's almost as if the board feels like it's at the point of no return, and this guy, he's a club legend. It would be awful to just sack him right now. So long story short, Nate, I know that was a very befuddled answer, but I'm emotional about this, and it does upset me that this guy is preventing this club, because objectively on the field, you have to agree with me, Nate, that player for player, this is a good side.
They have so much talent. They have World Cup winners. They have world-class players, and so it's just mind-boggling to me that they just cannot seem to get it together.
Mm-hmm. And I've heard discussions about letting him stay through the season, even from the fans that want him out. They're saying that, okay, this team doesn't have any chance of qualifying for Champions League. Apparently, we've already qualified for the Europa League by finishing runners-up in the Carabao Cup to Manchester City. And so there's really nothing left to play for in this season. So some of these fans just figure that, okay, this guy's been here for so long. Let's give him the respect that he deserves to finish out the season. But for me personally, he needs to leave now, because we're still in the Europa League. We have AC Milan on Thursday. I would feel so much better going into that fixture if we had a different manager going into Thursday in Milan. And if you look at Milan, for instance, and we were talking about this earlier, they brought in a new manager. They started off the season atrociously, but Gosh, what's the new manager's name? Shoot. Anyways, the new manager for AC Milan, I heard, is just like
no nonsense guy.
No nonsense. Like, he slaps his players like on the head if they even mess up in practice.
Yeah.
And you don't see any of that from Arsene Wenger. Arsene Wenger's instilled this mentality of complacency within Arsenal, and that is to wake us up. That is not what we need right now. So him thinking that he's the right man to continue this job it's just beyond me.
It looks to me, honestly, like the players have quit on him.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the effort that they're putting in, it reminds me of at the end of Jurgen Klinsmann's tenure as head coach of the U.S. men's national team.
Mm-hmm.
That his final World Cup qualifier down in Costa Rica was one of the worst performances I had ever seen from the U.S. men's national team. They looked like they had no energy. They looked to me like they had just given up. They went down a goal and they just completely given up. They quit on Jurgen Klinsmann, and I'm seeing those same signs with Arsenal. It looks to me that the players, they don't care. They don't want to play for him. So you mentioned the Europa League. Are we really at the point now with Arsenal Football Club, where like the Europa League is a standard that we're at? Because I mean, this is a club that 14 years ago went undefeated.
Yeah.
Went undefeated in the Premier League,
The
and now
Invincibles, yeah.
you know, oh how the mighty have fallen. I mean, it's just crashed and burned. So like the Europa League, is that really the standard that we're setting for Arsenal?
So my answer to this question, I think, is a lot different than a lot of other Arsenal fans, especially the ones that you would see on Arsenal Fan TV. Shout out my main man, Troops, DT. Y'all are doing work. But I honestly think that I'm, like, surprised if we win anything or qualify for anything with Arsene Wenger in charge. And this partially probably has to do with my own biases as becoming an Arsenal fan probably at the beginning of this decade, most likely. I never experienced the Thierry Henry teams that were so good with Dennis Bergkamp, Patrick Vieira, Robert Pires. Like, I didn't see any of those teams, and I've just heard stories of how they were like what Man City is today, just obliterating teams and just having unparalleled success. And so the only Arsenal I've really known has been the one that has somewhat floundered. I definitely think it's been a step down since I became a fan because.
So it's your fault, basically.
Yeah, let's not put all the blame on me. I would say the fault is on Arsene Wenger's deteriorating mental state because as he gets older,
that dude has lost his mind.
He is beyond. I think in his press conference after Brighton, I could see him smiling. He was smiling after saying that, oh, this is the worst run of form I've ever had in my entire career, and, you know, I'm very successful. Like, we don't care if you've been successful. You have not been successful all season, and just because this is the worst that you've done in your... You probably have done worse. You're just so old and forgetful that you forgot how bad you did in the past. Okay? So, the Europa League, I want to go to Milan and have confidence I don't. And I'm just happy that we have officially qualified for Europe next year because I don't think that this team under Arsene Wenger has any sort of quality to be winning anything.
Okay, I'm going to ask you this. Like, do you think it's even good that they're qualifying for Europe? Because, I mean, Chelsea won the Premier League last year without having to worry about Europe, and we'll get to Chelsea in a minute. But yeah. I think that maybe having that added distraction of European competition, and I mean, like, if you're going to be in Europe, you know, you're in the Europa League, so you're not playing any of the big boys. You're going out to freaking Östersund,
Sweden, or whatever.
So, like, is European competition even something that Arsenal needs? Because they're just qualifying for a competition that they have no chance of winning anyway, whether it's the Europa League or the Champions League.
I'll say it again. As long as Arsene Wenger's in charge, we don't have a chance of winning anything. So, as a fan, I personally want us to stay in Europe because that gives me something more to root for during the season because we're not winning the Premier League, we're not winning the Europa League, we're not winning the FA Cup or EFL Cup or whatever, the Carabao Cup, right? And it's just, I don't know, man. Like, as long as Arsene Wenger is here, again, I'll say it, I would be genuinely surprised if we won anything, but I don't think that being uninvolved in European competition would help things. Like, that's how far it's really gotten because, like, what am I supposed to say? Oh, yeah, if we don't qualify for the Europa League, that means, whoa, we're Premier League champions next year. Like, no, we have so many pressing player for player problems. Like there needs to be a lot of not only manager change but roster movement, like drastically, in order for this team to even think about once again qualifying for the top 4.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about the roster moves that need to happen. What are some specific moves that need to happen in terms of player personnel that you think can get this team back to just top 4 contention?
Yeah, so I have a few ideas. Number one is we need a new goalie. Petr Cech, we need to put him in a retirement home. He is looking slow. I don't think he can see anymore. He's just botching balls. He has no, like, once he's saved, like, a shot and needs to kick a goal kick down the field, he can't even do that properly. Like, he'll give up a horrible pass away for a Swansea attacker to come in, cut off the ball, and then score immediately. Like, so many of our worst conceded goals this year against sides that are getting run up in the Premier League. Like, you got teams like Swansea, which until recently hadn't won anything, and like Brighton and Bournemouth.
Yeah.
Like these, like we can't even beat these teams that have been getting beaten up all season.
These are teams that are like in relegation battles. Like, these are teams that have a chance of getting relegated.
Mm-hmm. So I mean, what does that say about us, right? Like, are we the real relegation side? Like, not that we're going to get relegated this year. We're way too far up in the table for that. But like, skill wise, like, we have these relegation teams that have just run us over. But we need a new goalie. Petr Cech, he's damaged goods. He's not good enough anymore. I'll say I've heard potential names being thrown out, like Jan Oblak from Atletico Madrid. If Real Madrid end up getting a new goalie, I could see maybe Keylor Navas coming into Arsenal. I think that would be a somewhat quality replacement. But it comes down to, will any of these players want to come to Arsenal? Which is pretty amazing because we managed to sign Aubameyang amidst all of this. Aubameyang committed to come to a team that has historically every single year just fallen into turmoil. And so after all of this, will any of these good players want to come to Arsenal? So I think a goalie's definitely a must. We needed 2 new center backs. Not 1, but 2. You said 2 is better than 1? Yeah, we need 2, Nate. Like, Koscielny, he's old. He's done. He's finished. Like, he's our captain, but you see no leadership out there on the field. Like, for me, when I think of a captain, I think of like a Tim Howard on the U.S. men's national team, of him just screaming at his players in order for them to shape up on the field, a field general. Koscielny, like, he can barely even, like, I feel like he's so old that he can barely even make a tackle anymore. So how does he even expect to have the respect of younger players in order to be a field general in this way? So Koscielny, he's old. Mustafi can't even stay on his feet. He's slipping everywhere. He needs to
Mustafi's a World Cup winner. So
yeah, World Cup winner.
That just blows my mind that, like, he suddenly forgot how to defend.
Yeah, but you realize that I think that Petr Cech has forgotten how to be a good keeper, and these defenders have forgotten how to defend because Arsene Wenger, the manager, the one who's in charge of instructing them in setting tactical formations, has lost his mind. So when that has happened, the players will therefore, still need to follow his instructions, just suffer as a result. I have no doubt that these are good players. It's just that management has just brought these players to a place where they're not even playable anymore. And so center backs was definitely need to go. I don't really have any names for who the heck could replace our center backs. I know Johnny Evans was a rumored name during the January transfer window. He's kind of older, but literally just any warm body. Go to MLS, pull some MLS defenders for all I care.
Honestly, I watched some of Arsenal's defending, and I'm like, Ben, you try and make fun of MLS, but you could, like, some of the defending Arsenal does, you could not survive in MLS with that defending.
Oh, my
honestly.
God. Yeah, just give me, who's a bad MLS team? Like Vancouver? Vancouver's back line. Like, I'll literally take that over Arsenal's back line at the moment. And then a right back, Hector Bellerin, I think has placed, he might be forcing a move. I know that's like pure speculation, but he's a Spanish guy, so he might be looking to go back to Spain or play in a different league because he went to and spoke at some Oxford University conference and was asked about what makes a true fan, and specifically called out Arsenal Fan TV for their constant criticism of player performances, to which Hector Bellerin replied, if you're a true fan, you shouldn't be criticizing players. You should be backing them no matter what, which I can somewhat understand that logic, but if you're like a true diehard fan, I think you have enough acumen to the sport to know what players are tactically doing wrong and therefore need to call you out on your BS because what other way is the team going to get better? And
I think just looking at Bellerin's comments, I think that true fans, and I don't like to use the term true fans, but I think it almost makes you a better fan if you're willing to criticize your own players instead of just walking around with blinders on saying, "Oh, hey, everything's all right."
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. And it's amazing because Bellerin said all this stuff, but his performances have not been backing up those statements. Like, he's still just, he can't pass. He's claimed and advertised as this really fast right back that can just sprint down the line and beat anyone on the run. But, like, seeing him on the field, he can't outrun anyone to get back on his line and properly defend as a right back. So I think a new right back, I was honestly, if this shows how bad it's gotten, I was sad when we sold Matthew Debussy because he was finally healthy and, like, he would have been better than anything we've put at right back so far this season. And then a holding mid. I think this arguably could be, besides the back line, our most crucial need. We have good midfielders. Jack Wilshere, Aaron Ramsey, I back them. They've put in, amidst all of this chaos, I feel like they've actually put in good performances.
I think Jack Wilshere's been probably Arsenal's best player this season.
They've really been good. Aaron Ramsey scored a hat trick a few weeks ago in one of our few wins in this just horrible rut. And Granit Xhaka, though, I think partially this comes down to Arsene Wenger playing him as a holding mid when he is not a holding mid. He's definitely a more attack-minding midfielder, more inclined to make a lot more shots. But he can't pass. Like, the guy cannot complete. I think he has like a 50% pass completion rate. He can't pass. And what's even worse is we sold Francis Coquelin, who's like one of our only true holding mids. Therefore, we have no depth. So if we didn't want to play Granit Xhaka, like, who would we play? Like Mohamed El Neni, but he can't provide any creativity. He kind of just stays in the back and just... So there's a lot of systemic, not only management problems, but depth problems for Arsenal as well.
And that's what happens when you sell guys like Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain, when you sell guys like Olivier Giroud. There's like no depth
Theo
on
Walcott,
this team.
Yeah. And so, albeit those guys, their time may have been now to go. So I think that's just further this problem of having guys that it was their time to leave the club, but not having ready and willing replacements.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not saying that we shouldn't have gotten Aubameyang, but we already had Lacazette, and if you had held on to Giroud and you still have Welbeck, might as well have used that money on Aubameyang to solve all these dilemmas. Get, like, two like pretty good center backs and a holding mid. You could have gotten 3 or 4 players for the amount of money we spent on Aubameyang. And so attack wasn't our need. We know that we could score goals. Lacazette, Ozil, and getting Mkhitaryan on a swap from Man U. Like, there's no doubt that this team would have been able to score goals. So I don't think that the needs were addressed in the January transfer window. And again, not just I love that we have Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, but if he has no one to give him service, he can't be effective. So I don't know, man. I've been talking a lot. It's been frustrating, dude. That's for sure.
Well, given, like, let's just assume that Arsene Wenger walks away at the end of the season. Let's just assume that.
Even though it might not even happen.
Even though if I was a betting man, I would say it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Who are some potential replacements? I know yesterday we were talking about former Bayern manager Carlo Ancelotti, who is actually in London, right? He's like living in London, like watching Arsenal.
I'll give you my take on Ancelotti. So Ancelotti got fired from a Bayern Munich team that they weren't in first at the time.
I think they were in second. They were 5 points behind Dortmund when he got fired.
But, like, it was really early on in the season. Then they sacked him. It would be kind of nice if Arsenal may have had that mentality in terms of, like, getting rid of managers when you know something's clearly going wrong. But beyond that, I heard Bayern players were, like, holding their own practices because they just didn't agree.
They revolted against him.
They revolted against him. I don't want that kind of poison coming into Arsenal. Like, I don't think that would help the team.
You need a no-nonsense guy.
And not to say that Ancelotti, probably maybe he learned from his mistakes and would come into Arsenal with a new mindset. I mean, he's been a successful manager at Real Madrid, has managed at some of the biggest clubs in the world, and so if Arsenal want to get back to that big club mentality, might as well have a guy who's been in those situations. But then again, with this recent history with Bayern, I don't know, man. I don't know. Who do you see potentially coming in to replace Wenger, if it happens?
I think a great choice would be Thomas Tuchel, former Dortmund manager, who actually he's a no nonsense guy, and The reason he actually got fired at Dortmund was because he got into a disagreement with the board after UEFA said that Dortmund had to play their Champions League game the day after the bus bombing.
Yeah.
So he actually got fired because he was really upset with the board because of that. But he's a no-nonsense guy. He was a tremendous manager at Dortmund. Under his reign, in 2 years, they didn't lose a single league game at home. So I think he would be a perfect choice to come in and straighten these guys out and tell them, hey, and he'll say, hey, you know what? If you're messing around, just we'll sell you. So I think he would be a perfect choice for Arsenal Football Club.
Yeah, definitely. I think some other opportunities could potentially be. I've heard that Arsenal may be looking to bring in former legends of the club to manage. I think that would be a good PR move, at least, like as a successor for Arsene Wenger, like get a player who played under him to maybe honor him in that way. I mean, I don't think he even deserves any of that anymore, honestly, but I think the board's at that place where they might want to do that. So yeah, I think it's reasonable to take these kind of candidates seriously. This could be players like Patrick Vieira, current manager of NYCFC in the MLS. He's been honing his craft and building up his managerial experience there. But as you said, he hasn't won anything in MLS.
Yeah, I don't really see that happening.
Yeah, because like if he hasn't been successful in MLS, like who's to say he would be successful in the Premier League? With that being said, though, he could be a good potential. Like if they were to sack him right now, today, he could be a good replacement sort of interim manager from them. I don't know if you would want to leave that with MLS season just getting underway right now. But that would be interesting. And then I've heard Thierry Henry's name.
I think Thierry Henry would be a better choice than Patrick Vieira.
Yeah, why is that?
Well, I think that, again, I just don't see Vieira leaving NYCFC. And, Thierry Henry may not have the same managerial experience that Vieira does. But I think if you're looking at just from a logistical point of view and saying who would be more likely to come to Arsenal and be the manager, maybe even on an interim basis until the end of the season, I think just Thierry Henry makes more sense.
Yeah, and I would love to see Thierry. Definitely a no-nonsense. Like, he knows the club's history and knows what this club should be doing in terms of putting in quality performances every week, competing with the big boys. And, right now I think it's just unequivocally clear that change needs to happen, and it's whether or not the Arsenal board wants to grow a pair and, just finally act. I heard Stan Kroenke sent his son
to do his dirty work.
To do his dirty work with that, and we won't even get into that and how bad that is. But it's a mess, and this is going to take, even if Arsene Wenger leaves, this is going to take a few transfer windows in order to solve the dilemmas that are going on here at Arsenal. But I think that's enough about me getting sad and depressed, and I think it's now a time to get a little happier because a team that we both dislike to some extent, Chelsea FC, with all of the struggles that Arsenal have been going through, Chelsea have sort of flown under the radar with how terrible they've been. And we were talking with, right before we went on air, with your roommate Josh, and he told us that Eden Hazard had some choice words to say for Antonio Conte. Do you want to recap to our listeners what was said in that regard?
Yeah, so basically on Sunday, Chelsea played a 1-0 loss against Manchester City, and they looked absolutely terrible. They weren't going forward.
No shots on goal.
No shots on goal.
No shots on goal.
It was like they tried to park the bus, sort of like how Man United parks the bus, but they even failed parking the bus because they gave up a goal. Like it was so bad. But Eden Hazard said, it was basically like we were running around but not playing soccer. We were just running around, pretty much doing nothing, running around like a chicken with their head cut off. Those aren't his words. Those are mine. Just kind of paraphrasing here. But Chelsea, they've been in absolute crisis mode. Mm-hmm. They have 2 wins since the start of 2018. They've lost to Watford, Bournemouth, Man United, and Manchester City. And next week they have to go to Barcelona to play out the second leg of their round of 16 Champions League match. So I mean, I think their top 4 hopes are done.
Yeah. Yeah, Nate. And you mentioned their top 4 hopes are done. It looks like they have to go to the new camp in Barcelona and beat Barcelona away, and they're on great form. Messi's, in the free kick form of his life.
Oh my gosh, that free kick yesterday was just that was his 600th career goal for club and country. Yeah. We are not worthy.
Exactly. So going up against an on-fire Messi and just everything going on with how poorly Chelsea have been playing, not the best situation to be walking into. So, Nate, I'm going to ask you, have they've fallen from, like, how has this happened? They've fallen from winning the Premier League last year to crashing out of the Champions League and then also falling out of the top four.
Yeah, so I think there's a couple issues going on here. I think, number one, last year they did not have to focus on European competition. This year they did, and I think that that's taken a toll on them because of their lack of depth, which is in part due to questionable decisions made by manager Antonio Conte. He sold off Diego Costa, which, I mean, we've talked about that on the show before, and that's, I think, was a huge mistake. Mm-hmm. They sold off Michy Batshuayi to Dortmund, who's absolutely tearing it up in the Bundesliga right now. Love it. And he also, until recently, was not playing Willian. And I think, seeing the way that Willian's played over the past month, I mean, scored against Barcelona, scored against Manchester United. And it's like, why haven't you been playing this guy? So, and then I think that, as simple as it sounds, they just can't score goals. I mean, Morata has zero confidence right now. And for some reason, Antonio Conte is dead set on playing Hazard through the middle, which these are the games where they played Hazard through the middle. Lost to Watford, the loss to Bournemouth, the loss yesterday. I don't understand why he keeps wanting to play Hazard through the middle. It makes no sense. The definition of insanity is to do the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. And by that definition, Antonio Conte is insane.
Falls into the same camp as Arsene Wenger in that regard, just in being super stubborn. And it's telling that Eden Hazard was the one who said these comments of, it feels like we're just running around and not even playing soccer. And he's the one that's getting moved out of position too.
Yeah, exactly.
And just he's even openly expressed that, like, I don't know what's going on with this formation, and I don't know why we've changed things. So,
and when he came off on Sunday, he didn't even acknowledge Antonio Conte. He just went straight to the bench, and I think he's gone in the summer. I don't think he wants to be there anymore.
Yeah, so, I mean, you mentioned that he's gone in the summer, but if Chelsea, let's say Chelsea...
Oh, I was talking about Eden Hazard. Eden Hazard will be leaving Chelsea in the summer. Yeah,
got it.
Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I think if a managerial change doesn't happen now, we could see him move in the summer. Yeah. I've heard, and this was obviously probably comments made right after Chelsea won the Premier League, but Eden Hazard was asked about all the rumors. He's like, I'm happy where I am, but, like, see how things have changed.
Right? Hey, it's real easy to be happy when you're winning.
Yeah, oh yeah, definitely, right? But so if Chelsea, let's imagine that Chelsea get battered by Barcelona like 4-0. Like, they pull, like, Liverpool beat Porto like 5-0.
5-0, yeah.
Let's imagine this happens. What is it? Not this Thursday, but next Thursday. Does Antonio Conte get sacked right after that game?
Yeah, I think so, and I'm gonna be honest. I think he wants to get sacked, and, like, as crazy as that sounds, I really think that he does not want to be there. But he's not gonna resign because, I mean, hey, if someone was paying me money to do something, I wouldn't want to leave that either. Yeah. But I know he's very upset with the board because they're not giving him the money that he's wanted to make moves during the transfer window. I know that he wanted to go after Lukaku. They missed out on Lukaku, and he didn't during the January window. He wanted to go after some other strikers who, but they ended up with Olivier Giroud, and I don't think he wanted Giroud at all because he hasn't been playing Giroud. And normally, if you go after a guy and you actually want them, as soon as that guy comes in, you're going to be playing him.
Yeah.
And Giroud hasn't been playing, so I think that the writing is definitely on the wall for Antonio Conte. I think I'll be surprised if he's 2 weeks from now he's still the manager at Chelsea.
And yeah, how the mighty have fallen. Last season, raising the trophy, us going to Shakespeare's here in San Diego, and all those diehard Chelsea fans who were just loving Antonio Conte last season, and they were singing his name. How the tables have turned in that regard, and it's been really amazing to see. I think the last thing I'll say about Antonio Conte, the writing on the wall for me was when Peter Crouch was rumored to transfer to Chelsea. Because when you're thinking about signing a 37-year-old striker well beyond his prime years, when you have Michy Batshuayi off the bench for you already and just stubbornly refuse to play him and refuse to change, like you said, it's a recipe for disaster. So, Antonio Conte, pack your bags, you're getting sacked. You heard it here first on the Comeback Kid. He's done. And I think that leads us into talking about Champions League. And Chelsea's match against Barcelona could be his very last as a manager for Chelsea, and it could be that Champions League match. But let's look ahead at some other Champions League matches that catch our eye here. So, Nate, what I know you'll be watching all the matches most likely, but which ones are you especially paying close attention to in this round?
Well, I'm really going to be paying attention to tomorrow, Paris Saint-Germain versus Real Madrid, and then on Wednesday, Spurs versus Juventus. So PSG right now, they're kind of in a precarious position because they trail 3-1 on aggregate. They lost 3-1 in Madrid a couple weeks ago, and now they need to come back from a 3-1 deficit without their $200 million man. Neymar just had foot surgery, and he's going to be out pretty much for the remainder of the season. We'll see what happens with the World Cup. So I think PSG they're in a really bad spot, and I see Real Madrid to go through.
Yeah, and it's going to be tough to win without Neymar, but that poses the question.
I knew that was coming.
Have we seen Neymar play his last game as a PSG player? Is he, by your somewhat, we called you crazy at the time, but like I'm starting to think this might actually happen, that Neymar might move to Real Madrid and Real Madrid might be able to pony up the money to get him there. So do you think that we've seen Neymar in his last game for PSG?
No, I think that I do eventually think he will end up playing for Real Madrid, but it's going to be after Ronaldo leaves to make his move to go play in MLS.
Oh my god.
Or until Real offers PSG $300 million. But I think it's sooner rather than later. I mean, we were talking on the phone yesterday about the Ronaldo and MLS thing, and I think that could be a thing in the next 5 years, which remains to be seen. But yeah, I think Neymar will eventually be playing for Real Madrid, but no, I think he'll still next season he'll be playing with Paris Saint-Germain.
Yeah, and with how poorly Real have done in the league, we could see them spending $300 million this offseason. Like they could sell Bale, sell a few players in order to get a surplus in there, in order to spend $300 million. And how hated would Neymar be in Barcelona if that happened? Oh my gosh.
Burning jerseys.
Oh yeah, I mean if they've already not been burned, right?
Yeah,
definitely. Like he would be the mortal nemesis going in. Like move over Ronaldo, Neymar would be the next guy. That is for sure. So yeah, that wraps up our soccer discussion. We had a lot to catch up on since we haven't had a show in a really long time. But Arsenal, I really hope that you guys turn it around.
In the words of Troops. Pray for Arsenal.
Yep, in the words of Troops. We're not going to bring out any banners, but let's just thoughts and prayers, guys. Thoughts and prayers. So when we come back, we're actually going to be moving over to another kind of corruption, speaking of. In the NCAA, a lot of stuff's been going on, and we're here to bring you all of it. So stay tuned, and we'll be right back.
Like what you're hearing? Well, I've got news for you. You no longer have to wait a whole week to hear from your favorite sports personalities. Hi, I'm Nate Wiggins, and Ben Friedel and I have got you covered. Give our show, The Unathletic, a sports podcast, a listen. We release new episodes every Monday and are committed to bringing you the best content. That's right, the very best content.
All right, welcome back to The Unathletic, everyone. Wow, it's strange to say that one out loud, but I like it. It's good. It's definitely good. I don't think we informed our listeners why we chose The Unathletic in the first place, so I think this would be a good time to do that. So Nate, you wanna let our listeners know why The Unathletic out of all the names we could have picked?
Well, this was actually your idea.
Yeah, but you can let them know.
So I think you should. All right, you should go ahead and do it.
So essentially, we were thinking because the other show, Rev Up Those Friars, which is every Friday, they had their name set in stone because they went to serve at high school. Matt and Nigel did. They're the Friars. Rev Up Those Fires is an obvious SpongeBob allusion, and it just worked. And then so we came together and we're like, oh man, what are we gonna do? And we realized that both of us are just two non-athletes who just like talking about sports. I don't know. I played tennis in high school. I haven't picked up a racket in a while. So I know for a fact that I cannot be considered an athlete anymore.
I mean, I was a JV superstar.
Oh yeah.
So I don't know if that counts for anything, but I was a JV basketball MVP. I pretty much have the same amount of MVPs as Kobe Bryant. He also has one MVP.
Yeah,
so.
But do you have the same amount of Oscars?
I do not have the same amount of Oscars, no.
Yeah, but Kobe has the same amount of Oscars as Leonardo DiCaprio.
I know.
If you think about it that way.
I know.
That is just amazing to me. But that was a total digression. Anyways, we picked this name because we're just two dudes who love sports. We we enjoy watching, playing, not necessarily in our strongest suit. We're not like Nigel Ward here, who's striking out hitters for USD or anything. So, that's why we're called the Unathletic. And speaking of college athletics, actually,
good transition.
The NCAA, and recently corruption has once again come to the forefront for the NCAA, notoriously one of the most corrupt sports organizations in the world. I think the NCAA, I'm not going to put them as horrible as FIFA, because FIFA has like slaves and stuff. But yeah, I'd say number 2 behind FIFA is the NCAA. And then what happened was the University of Arizona men's basketball coach Sean Miller was wiretapped by an ongoing FBI investigation, and then the FBI caught Sean Miller speaking over the phone about freshman recruit DeAndre Ayton and offering him $100,000 to influence him to come to the University of Arizona. And when this news came out, I would say a lot of people weren't surprised, or at least I wasn't surprised, because not only has corruption become a seemingly regular thing in the NCAA, but I think it's been common knowledge that schools have been pulling shady stuff to recruit forever. And so my question to you, Nate, is why do this now out of all times, and why make it Sean Miller of all people?
Well, I think that, it's pretty well established. I think you have to be pretty ignorant to not realize that this is happening all over college basketball. It's happening at every big program. But I think this is the first time where I've heard about like a head coach being caught discussing something like this. Usually, if it's happening by one of the assistant coaches are probably the ones that are handling all this. But this is the first time where I can remember that like a big time head coach is the one who's been caught. And when this FBI probe into college basketball started, I remember I was reading about it, and it was all the people that were specifically named were assistant coaches. There were really no big time head coaches that were named when this investigation started. So yes, this is certainly happening in college basketball, but I think it's more the assistants, and Sean Miller just got caught up in the wrong business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you're right. And this finding has made this FBI investigation public, and by doing so, the FBI have stated that they're investigating all the major programs now into what kind of money was given, how long has this been going on, which coaches have been doing this, which assistant coaches have been doing this, what admin has been involved, and so on and so on and so on. It's just this endless web of involvement, it seems like, in terms of dismantling this corruption. And I'd say corruption is an interesting word. I think that's a word that's been thrown around a lot with this scandal on major networks. But when we were talking, it doesn't seem like this could have been the most corrupt thing in the world, given the context of how college athletes are already treated in the NCAA, right? So, regardless, this is still potentially the biggest scandal in NCAA history. Especially basketball, right? This is the biggest thing to come out in basketball for a really long time. We've seen a lot of stuff in football that is definitely not okay, with the Jerry Sandusky thing that went on, and so on and so forth. But my question to you, Nate, is we've seen punishments handed out for past scandals all the time in the NCAA. They just stripped Louisville of a national championship for Rick Pitino's involvement in recruiting students in very unethical ways. What should a punishment be for U of A and Sean Miller? But also take into account how corrupt the NCAA already is. So should there be a punishment at all for this?
Well, I don't think that necessarily what Sean Miller did or is alleged of doing is really morally wrong. But he did break the rules. But for me personally, I don't think that there should be a punishment. Honestly, I think that the NCAA invited this scandal with their own corruption. I think that you want to talk about college basketball players or college basketball coaches being corrupt. I think the NCAA needs to look at themselves and say, how did we let this happen? Look in the mirror and say, this environment of corruption, is this our fault? Are we the victims of our own wrongdoing, basically? Mm-hmm. And I'll just leave it there.
Yeah, so it's interesting because I've heard from you and other sources that Sean Miller is probably not even going to get fired. No. U of A is thinking about keeping him there, and there hasn't been any explicit punishment handed out by the NCAA yet because investigations are still going on and so forth. But it'd be interesting to me for Sean Miller to stay in his position without some executive order by the NCAA, because what about Rick Pitino and what happened at Louisville and them stripping them of a national title and then Rick Pitino's contract being effectively terminated? Like, would the NCAA then therefore just be kind of like cherry picking as to what programs and what coaches that they attack? Because, for instance, Rick Pitino is a bigger name than Sean Miller. We'll put it that way. And so by punishing Rick Pitino and then being like, okay, well, Sean Miller, so we'll just let him stay there. Like, is that an ethical standard to be holding themselves to? Because for me, that seems pretty inconsistent.
But I think inconsistency is the name of the game with the NCAA. I think that there's been plenty of times where they've let certain programs off and punished other programs quite viciously. And from a kind of a selfish point of view, talking about Louisville getting stripped of their national championship, I would just like to point out that they beat Michigan in that 2013 national championship. So now that national championship has been stripped, if anyone asks me, did Michigan win the national championship in 2013, I'm going to say yes. God. Because, to be honest, Michigan got robbed in that game anyway. Trey Burke's block was clean, but, that's neither here nor there. So I'm gonna stop talking right now before I break something.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah, so regardless of whether Michigan actually holds a NCAA National Basketball Championship in the year 2013 is, I think, besides the point, Nate.
Yes,
and I think part of the problem for me, getting back on track here, is just trying to identify a root of this is college basketball coaches, and I think college coaches in general across NCAA Division I sports have far too much power in respect to the students that they're dealing with. With that, I think there's a complete sense of entitlement in thinking that they can get away with anything. I saw from USA Today that they said, okay, like, Sean Miller most likely did this because of a mentality of everyone else was doing it, so why can't we? But does that make it okay? Just kind of answering these overarching moral, ethical questions. But again, I think that these college coaches think they're above the law. I mean, look at Dabo Sweeney and Jimbo Fisher. So Dabo cannot take his name seriously. Oh my God. I don't know what you guys are doing in the South, but name your kids a little better. Let's just put it that way. He gets paid multi-million dollars every year to be the head football coach of Clemson, who, has been obviously a very successful program in recent years. And he's publicly come out and said, oh, if you were to pay the college athletes, that's where you lose me. I wouldn't come to this job anymore. And I'm like, bull crap. You would totally come to this job because they're signing you multi-million dollar checks. And you're getting all that share of money, and your players are getting nothing. What a sweeter situation for a coach of an SEC program than that. ACC program than that. I can't think of one. And sorry, my mind was already on Jimbo Fisher, who's at A&M, which is an SEC school. And Jimbo I think he's getting paid over $10 million to be the coach at A&M per year. That is unbelievable, considering the fact that college football athletes, college basketball athletes, and even athletes here at USD are treated like animals sometimes with all of the horrible NCAA regulations that go on. And, there was, I think you have a better memory of me of the one basketball player who was interviewed saying that he goes to bed hungry.
That was Shabazz Napier.
Yeah, Shabazz Napier
at UConn, yeah.
And some nights he went to bed hungry because he didn't have enough money to pay the bills. I think there was former NBA player, I think it was Jalen Rose, on one of his talk shows that he was doing, and he was asked about whether or not college athletes should be paid, and his response was, okay, well, why are my coaches making so much money when my mom at her house doesn't even have enough money to keep the electrical bill and all the lights are off? Like, what kind of system have the NCAA, like, what has been going on with the NCAA to think that's okay?
Exactly.
And to think that they can exploit so many athletes who come from these really poor conditions and poor living environments to make them just seemingly like slaves almost. So I realize that the problem of solving all of the corruption within college athletics is not an easy process, and that's why it hasn't been done, because no one has a definite answer, but we're going to try to do it here on the Unathletic. Nate, where do we go from here, and what needs to happen in order to just untangle this mess?
I think you have to start by paying the players, and that sounds like a very simple answer, but it's really not, because there's all types of questions that go into paying the players. But I think it's a good start. You have to, in order to solve a problem, you got to start somewhere. And I think just starting by paying the players would be a step in the right direction to end some of the corruption that's in the NCAA.
Yeah, man, and I think, again, I'll say, like, I definitely agree with you in that the payers should be played, but we have to realize that this is such a multifaceted thing. It's like, okay, like, what do you pay? Like, how much money is allotted from the NCAA to give to Alabama versus University of San Diego? What does an Alabama football player make versus a USD swimmer? Like, there's, and even the question of like men's sports versus female sports, in terms of revenue splitting. Like, what is a fair amount of money to be allocated? And you can really get into the weeds with all this stuff. But it's clear that in order for those more intricate questions to be answered, some form of action needs to happen now. And I agree with you. It is paying the players now, right? And you mentioned that the NCAA, part of their reasoning for not paying, they cited which amendment, Nate?
They cited the 13th Amendment, with which, if you guys don't know, the 13th Amendment is the amendment that abolished slavery in the United States, except in the case of prison labor. And so the NCAA basically said that, because the 13th Amendment allows for unpaid prison labor, we can use that as a justification for not paying our players. So, like, the 13th Amendment is pretty much like, it abolished slavery, but not really. And I think really what the NCAA is saying is like, we're basically
so you're saying
slave owners, and these NCAA athletes are our slaves. That's literally what they're saying by citing the 13th Amendment.
So you heard it here first, guys. College athletes are slaves because the NCAA said so explicitly by citing the 13th Amendment. I don't think that's a hot take for a lot of people.
No, it's not.
Because of how unfairly people have been treated. I mean, both of us have talked to athletes here, and we're very fortunate to be at an institution like USD and to have the great resources that we have. But talking with some of the athletes, even though USD is a very comfortable place to go to school, like, with all the time and effort they put in on a weekly basis, it can be tough. And our hearts go out to those guys, especially with all the hardship that they go through. And I think that kind of segues perfectly into the next thing we're going to talk about, is specifically at USD. There was recent news that USD head basketball coach Lamont Smith was arrested on March 25th. So that was 2 Sundays ago. On
February 25th.
February, not March. He will be arrested. Oh, no. That is
into the future.
No, he definitely was already arrested. And on claims of domestic violence, assault with force, likely to commit great bodily injury, and also false imprisonment. And he was taken into custody at the Oakland Alameda Airport last month. So, man, I remember waking up to this on a last Monday morning, and I was just like shocked. How did you feel reading this news, Nate?
Well, actually, what happened was my sister called me asking about it, and I was like, what are you talking about? And so I looked it up, and when I first heard about it, or when my sister first told me about it, I thought that, because it's funny enough that at the University of South Dakota, their head basketball coach's name is Coach Smith. So I at first thought, they're talking about the University of South Dakota head coach, and they just got the USD mixed up. But as soon as I read it, I was just shocked and absolutely disbelief. I couldn't even believe what I was reading. Yeah,
and if you think about, he hasn't officially been charged with anything, so we don't even want to speculate on what's true.
We're just kind of going off of what we know.
Yeah, so going off of what we know, I would say personally, on an objective level, my question to you, Nate, is does this set our basketball program back?
I think it hurts, but I don't think that this is a extreme setback to a basketball program that had been making progress over the last 3 years. So they just played their conference tournament game on last Saturday, which was an 85-79 loss to BYU. But and assistant head coach Sam Scholl was the head coach, and he's the acting head coach until the end of the season. I don't think that this incident and Coach Smith not being on the sidelines, I don't think that really had a huge effect on the outcome of the game. I think that, if they had to play maybe 1 or 2 days after this incident happened, it could have had an effect. But it had been almost a week, and I think that those guys were done answering questions about it. We're just excited to go out and play basketball, and I think that this certainly hurts, but it's not gonna. I don't think it's going to absolutely derail the program.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm sorry. I feel like I disagree with you though. Like really, because although it was a good effort by our players to go out against BYU and put in a good performance given everything that's gone on, and I'm sure that all the players want to put this as far behind them. I know on a personal level that like if I had to go out there and knowing that like my coach who I had trusted all season did all this stuff, I would right before the playoffs. I would be so shaken up, and it would, so I think that, on a player level, it had to play an effect. But like Nate, let me ask you, but at least on like a recruiting level, right? Because Lamont Smith dealt with a lot of the recruiting, or at least most of bringing players to USD. We had he did a great job in getting transfers, like Isaiah Pinheiro in, right? And he's in one of my classes, and like came in after, and I saw him, and he looked kind of down in the dumps, like, man, felt bad for him. But on a recruiting level, do you think that Lamont not being there also sets us back? And then also USD potentially now has a bad reputation because of all this.
Yeah, I think that, Sam Scholl, he's been around this program for almost 10 years. He's been on Coach Smith's staff for, I think, 2 or 3 years now. So it's not like if he is promoted to being the head coach, which, again, we're just speculating here. I think that him being the head coach and being a familiar face around the program it's not going to be a complete derailment to our recruiting. But that's going to be my biggest question for whoever the new head coach is how good of a recruiter are you? Because Coach Smith was a very good recruiter, bringing in guys like Olin Carter, Tyler Williams, Juwan Gray, guys who have been absolute just extreme playmakers on this team. So that's going to be the biggest question is recruiting and how good of a recruiter is the new coach going to be if there is a new head coach.
Yeah.
But just given everything that's happened over the past week, I just want to give a shout out to the players who left everything out on the floor, gave everything that they had on Saturday afternoon in Las Vegas against BYU. They were down 17 points. They came back to tie the game and ended up losing. But all season, this team has shown heart. This team has shown fight. This team has shown tenacity, taking some really good teams down to the wire. And me as a member of the bullpen and as someone who went to every single game, after the games, they would come over, they would thank us, they would high five us, and they would do that even after games that they lost. And we in the bullpen were just so grateful for everything, everything that they accomplished this year. And so I just want to thank those guys for, the effort that they put in each and every week was just absolutely tremendous. And you know what? Given all this, they had a very good season. Yeah. They won 18 games. There's a chance that they could still go to a postseason tournament. So, just focusing on basketball for a second, those guys had a tremendous season and, deserve praise for their accomplishments this year.
Yeah, especially after recent events. This season is, I think, regardless, even if they had won 10 less games, still be equally as proud of these guys for, kind of going through what they went through. And I think, like you said, in terms of recruiting, this next head coach is really, whoever it may be, is going to have to step up, because if I was a freshman and saw that USD was coming for me, I'll be like, wait, wasn't their last head coach arrested for domestic violence? Like, that would not want me to go to a school that we lost to Gonzaga by, 5?
Yeah, we lost to Gonzaga by 5, lost to St. Mary's by 3.
Yeah, and these are all ranked teams, and we were so close. So
we were up 8 on Gonzaga in the second half.
And so if you think that, and 2 years ago, how much were we losing to Gonzaga by?
Actually, last year we lost to Gonzaga by 58.
Exactly.
And we lost to St. Mary's by, I think, 45.
If the trajectory were to have continued under Lamont, there was maybe even speculation that next year we could have beaten some of those teams.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And been on a bubble for the big dance,
NCAA
like
tournament,
the NCAA tournament. But for me, this has to be a blow to that, and I think sets our program behind 2 or 3 years. That's me on a recruiting level. Just it's going to be tough to get freshmen in after all this stuff going on, and it just makes it even that much worse knowing that we are just so close to beating these top teams and, getting USD on the map, becoming a school like St. Mary's, which is a tiny school.
Yeah.
But they're able to compete with the big boys and be in the NCAA tournament like seemingly every year and, just put in work. So, our hearts go out to the basketball players, and let's hope that they qualify for a postseason tournament and that the basketball season. We haven't seen our last home game at USD yet.
I hope not
over this season
mostly because I want to wear the squirrel costume again.
Oh yeah, this guy runs out on he's a big guy in our student section, and he has a squirrel costume because one of our was he a freshman?
Yeah.
Basketball player.
Belarus.
Yeah, he's from Belarus, and his name is very hard to pronounce. So he was in talking to the media, he's like, oh, like, what name do you want to be, referred to as? And he's just like, call me the squirrel. And then, so therefore, the squirrel jokes were born, and Nate has a squirrel costume. So,
which I just want to point out, I didn't buy it myself. Athletics bought it for me. Just
really?
Putting that out there. Yeah, I didn't buy that myself.
Wow. See,
Yeah.
Athletics is
shout out to Robbie Hill and Athletics.
Yeah, shout out to NCAA funding for giving Nate a squirrel suit, but not paying our athletes. There we go. Okay. All right. On that beautiful note,
you said it, not me.
On that beautiful note, we'll be right back to discuss who is riding the bus this week. Welcome back to the Unathletic, everyone. When we were last with you, we were breaking down every single facet of NCAA corruption that we could think of, and now we turn our attention to the NCAA once again to see who or what team rides the bus this week. Nate, take it away. Who is riding the bus?
So riding the bus this week is Louisville basketball. Not for having their national championship taken away.
No.
But for
not for sending strippers to recruit freshmen. Not that. No.
No, but for losing a game in which they had a 4-point lead with 9/10 of a second remaining.
Oh.
They were up by 4 with 9/10 of a second remaining against number 1 Virginia when they had a bad foul on a 3-point shot. So Virginia went to the free throw line, made the first 2 free throws, but got a lane violation on the third one. So Louisville was up 2. All they had to do was just inbound the ball, but they got called for an inbound violation, turned the ball over. Virginia got the ball back and hit a buzzer beater bank 3 to beat Louisville. And Louisville is on the bubble right now for the NCAA tournament. That win, I think, would have gotten them in, and now their NCAA tournament hopes might be dead because of just a couple of boneheaded mistakes. Shout out to my dad. His favorite word to use is boneheaded. So,
Bonehead.
Yeah.
There you go. All
so,
right,
Louisville basketball, ride the bus.
Yeah, get out of here, Louisville, man. I mean, if getting a national championship stripped away from you in the past 2 weeks wasn't enough, you probably just cost your tournament chances on what was the specific play? It was a turnover because he moved in the...
Yeah, so in basketball, on an inbounds pass, you can only run the baseline on a made shot.
Yeah.
But it wasn't a made shot, and so the guy started running a baseline, got called for a travel, and ended up turning the ball over. So then Virginia got the ball back, 9/10 of a second remaining, and hit a buzzer beater 3.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. Like, how you could...
If USD ever lost a game like that, you might not see me for a couple of days. Just being totally honest.
Oh, man. So, Louisville's going to have to recover from that, and... yeah, I mean, we probably won't see him in the tournament. Yeah, I mean, beyond that, I think that's pretty much all we had for this week here on the Unathletic. Nate, what are you going to be watching in this upcoming week of sports?
Well, we just spent a whole segment talking about NCAA basketball corruption, but I'm going to be watching
You're still
college
gonna be
basketball.
Watching.
Yes, I got conference championship games coming up, and then next Sunday, Selection Sunday, to find out who made the tournament, and I can't wait because the best 4 days in sports are coming up. Ben, what will you be watching this week?
Before I let you know what I will be watching, Nate, I want to ask you, what's your hot take teams to make the tournament?
To make the tournament, or to make a run in the tournament?
Make the tournament specifically.
Make the tournament. Ooh, I think right now both USC and UCLA are on the bubble, but I think both
they
those
just played each other.
Yeah, and I think actually UCLA might have killed USC's tournament hopes, but I think both those teams will find their way in. I think that they could both play their way in if they do well in the conference tournament. And then I think Louisville is out, and I think Syracuse, they might be the very last team in with because of their win last Saturday against Clemson.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, and there's a lot of historic programs on the bubble this year, so it's going to be very interesting to see if those teams can, because if they get in, they're dangerous. They have the history of winning, some very experienced coaches in order to take down some bigger teams, and that's for sure. I think in terms of what I'll be watching, we mentioned it earlier in the show. I'll be watching Arsenal play AC Milan this Thursday. And this is gonna be a real tough match at the San Siro in Milan, Italy. AC Milan, I think they've been unbeaten in their last. I think they've won.
They've won 8. They won I think their last 8 or 9.
Yeah, they've won 9 in a row. So they're firing on all cylinders. It looks like they're gonna come from the ashes and qualify for Champions League in Italy, which would be truly amazing. And this just comes at the most inopportune time for an Arsenal team just looking for a win. It's just going in to want to talk about teams with history. AC Milan are, arguably top 5 biggest teams in the world in terms of what they've done historically, and now we're finally seeing them get back on track to where they once were. So, thoughts and prayers go out to Arsenal for this Thursday. I don't know if I'm going to wear my Arsenal jersey to school. I've kind of felt ashamed in even wearing it recently, and that's how bad they've been doing. But, hopefully they prove me wrong, and I'm just a lot happier over the next week because I'm pretty bummed out right now because of all that, all the struggles Arsenal have had. So that does it for this week. On this inaugural edition of the Unathletic. Hopefully you guys had as great of a time as we did. Remember that we are also available on iTunes and other platforms, so make sure to check us out there, and we will be back next week. So have a great week, everyone. We're good.
It was great.
Yeah. There we go.
Check us out on Twitter and on iTunes, YouTube, Facebook, and SoundCloud. Also, check out our sports blog. Articles are released every week, and our writers need your support. In the meantime, we'll be back next week.
Babylons can't crack the code. Used to sip out, stop